worn out tires, new configuration, a 4-car battle for the win at the very end. Wow, what a day at COTA. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Road course racing. It's a fun time where we go right and left at different venues around the United States. This weekend, NASCAR made its first trip of the season to a road course in Circuit of the Americas, a track that has been hosted many events over the last couple of years, like Formula One, which still plays a majority host to it. It's hosted other events like IndyCar, rally cars. We came here to COTA 4 years ago in 2021, and we've had a lot of very interesting races, such as the last lap battles for the win, racing in the rain. But this time we come to COTA at a new configuration, and we put on a show for the fans. And at the end of the race, we had an amazing battle between multiple guys for the win at the very end. But only one came out on top, and it's our first repeat winner of the year, and he does it in back-to-back weeks. Let's get into all that went down at COTA. Number 1. Bell goes back-to-back. Christopher Bell becomes the first repeat winner of the 2025 season as he captured yesterday's EchoPark Automotive Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas, holding off William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Busch for the victory. What a performance by Christopher Bell and the 20 team. He started 19th in the race, but slowly worked his way up through the field and passing guys left and right whenever he could. He's pretty good at this road course racing thing, mind you. His first career Cup win came at a road course back in 2021 when he was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing his first year with the team, and it was at the Daytona road course that we had that year. But then he was able to win another road course race a year later at the Charlotte Roval, and that was allowed him to punch his ticket to the round of 8, and of course he was able to make the championship 4 in that round after winning at Martinsville. This is his third career road course win, and he did a very good job yesterday. He was able to make some split decisions and moves left and right. The number 20 team, they had that car hooked up for Christopher Bell yesterday. And at the beginning of the final stage, he started to show his strength and how fast that race car was when he made a dive bomb pass to the inside of Shane Van Gisbergen after they crossed the restart zone beginning the final stage. And he found himself inside the top 5 and hounding Kyle Busch in those last couple of laps of the race yesterday. Bell literally, I think, had the best car towards the very end of the race, and the way he was able to work his way through the corners and everything, trying to chase down the number 8 car. But then when everybody had their sequence of green flag pit stops, Christopher Bell, the number 20 team, elected to extend the stint a little bit longer. Once the leader Kyle Busch pitted, Bell was able to stay out, and they ran for 3 more laps so he could get 3 more lap fresher tires to try to run down the leaders when he made his pit stop. He came and got the tires, and he cycled back into the pack and was running third at the time. Then we had a caution with 14 laps to go when Denny Hamlin got locked up and got turned around and went right into the 3 car of Austin Dillon, generating a caution. I was wondering about how many cars would possibly stay out versus who would come in for making pit stops. Christopher Bell's team, of course, was one of the cars that said, we're going to stay out. We've got fresher tires. We can get these guys. And on that restart, he was able to work it and was able to work his way inside of William Byron to get second place and began hounding Kyle Busch with the 3-lap fresher tires. The entire time, though, the 8 car was on defense while Christopher Bell was playing offense. Bell was finally able to get by Kyle Busch with about 5 laps to go in the race, and from there on, he passed the 8 car, and he did not look back at all, even though he had challenges from behind, because as much as the 3-lap fresher tires helped Christopher Bell get by the 8 car, he was still struggling to hang on to that car. You know, with the amount of laps they had in those tires and them being up to temperature, not a lot of grip. He was hanging on for dear life, trying to prevent William Byron and Tyler Reddick from chasing him down from behind and trying to get by him anyways, whether it's a dive bomb move or a bump and run. Bell held his ground throughout the last few laps of the race and was able to bring it home and get the victory. The first repeat winner of the year, and Bell does it back-to-back weeks. That's the first time Christopher Bell's ever won back-to-back races in the Cup Series. And once again, this just shows the strength and demeanor that this young man has. You know, one thing that I've been thinking about, the way that we've seen Christopher Bell run so far this year, and how he's performing and winning all these races, it gets me wondering. This probably has to do with the fact that Joe Gibbs has given his drivers the freedom to go do other forms of racing during the weekday, even during the Cup Series season. In the past, Joe Gibbs has been against guys running in other series because he's been worried about their health and everything. But seeing, obviously how Hendrick Motorsports lets their drivers, Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, Chase Hill, and William Byron, do other forms of racing whenever they please and whenever they want to. Joe Gibbs, I think this year decided because of, his grandson, Ty Gibbs, being his third year in the Cup Series and adding a dirt racer in Chase Briscoe. And, of course, Chris Rebello's dirt experience, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to take the reins off these guys and I'm going to let them do whatever they want to when it comes to racing. Obviously, stay committed to the Cup Series, but you are free to go do whatever you want in other days of the week, whether it be some dirt racing or short track racing. And I think that's definitely giving Chris Rebello a lot of confidence and, a lot of, weight off his shoulders, thinking he can go have some fun now while also competing in the Cup Series. And that's allowing him to be this strong, I think, at the beginning of the season. One thing I think that Chris Rebello does not have anything right now in the NASCAR Cup Series is weaknesses on tracks. He's been pretty good at drafting tracks. He won last week at Atlanta, and he's a really good road course racer. This is his third road course win. We all know how good he is on the bigger tracks, particularly your 1.5 mile, 2 mile tracks, where tire wear has played a major factor these last couple of years with this car, and letting him hang it out loose, especially up against the wall, it plays into Chris Rebello's driving style, and he's been a good short track racer as well. So I don't think there's any weakness with this guy right now, but the only thing that could slow him down is weeks where they're consistently not performing well and not really running well. That can happen, and that has happened in the past. If they can limit that, there's no stopping this 20 team. So big congrats to Chris Rebello and the 20 team on a very impressive win yesterday. Number 2, Busch, strong all day, but fades late. Kyle Busch almost broke through and breaking that 59 race winless streak yesterday. He had such a great race car in the number 8 car. He started in the 8th position and he drove his way up to the front of the field and competing all day long with the likes of Tyler Reddick, Shane Van Gisbergen, AJ Allmendinger the entire way. Kyle Busch had such a great race car. And it's not a surprise. Kyle Busch has been pretty good at road course racing. The problem is, the guy hasn't won a road course race in almost 10 years. It's been almost 10 years since Kyle Busch won a road course, and that was Sonoma the year that he won the championship, and of course the year he missed the first few races of the year after he broke his leg in that Xfinity Series wreck at Daytona. But Kyle Busch yesterday, we saw flashes of old Kyle Busch running up front on road courses and competing for the win on a consistent basis like we saw back then. Kyle had such a great car yesterday. He led 42 laps, and despite all of the battles he was going up against with SVG and Allmendinger and, of course, Chris Rebello late in the going, I thought that Kyle Busch was going to break through and get the victory. But when we had that sequence of green flag pit stops, Kyle Busch and Randall Burnett brought the car to pit road, while Chris Rebello, of course, was able to stay out, and he carried on for 3 more laps until he pitted. I feel like looking back on that, Randall Burnett probably made a mistake about letting Kyle Busch stay out there, coming in early while Chris Rebello stayed out. I think he probably should have kept him out there for a couple more laps, let's see what the 20 does. Of course, as the leader, you're a sitting duck for one thing in these races. So they pitted Kyle Busch earlier. Chris Rebello, of course, stayed out late. And then when we got that caution with 14 to go, it bunched the whole field back up. And I knew Kyle Busch is going to have his work cut out for him, and he's going to have his hands full with those guys behind him with relatively fresher tires. And even in that restart, Kyle got a good restart, but Chris Rebello was closing from behind and kept hounding him every single lap. But you could tell the entire time, Kyle Busch was hungry for this win. He wanted it so badly because the guy didn't win a single race last year. He didn't make the playoffs last year. It's uncanny and weird seeing Kyle Busch in this position where he's trying to get back to victory lane, a place where he hadn't been at since 2023. It's really, really weird. And it looked like he was going to do it, but because he was on the older tires and because Bell kept hounding him and forcing him to make mistakes, even though those two did make slight contact at the top of the S's, they were able to carry on without any consequences. But a couple of corners later, Bell got by Kyle Busch, and then you saw those older tires kick in, and he started fading. He faded from possibly winning the race. He faded back to almost, 5 seconds behind the leaders after the checker flag because of how much he pushed those tires while playing defense with the guys coming in from behind. But despite all that, Kyle Busch, I know he was upset and everything, but I'm seeing a lot of speed from this number 8 car so far earlier this year. Something that we didn't really see a whole lot of at the beginning of last year with Kyle and Richard Childress racing, and they were having their struggles. But you can't say that they had a bad day on pit road. They had a really good day. It's not the pit crew's fault. I think it was just a miscalculation of pitting the 8 car earlier versus the 20 car. Maybe should have kept him out a few more laps. But the speed that we're seeing this 8 car so far, I'm thinking, folks, he is going to get back to victory lane this year, and who knows, if he does win a race, who knows how many more races he will win. But I will also say he was very poised in his interview that you saw probably on the internet. He gave a polite interview to Caitlin Vincey talking about, coming up short but proud of the whole entire team. And honestly, it's showing a lot of maturity on his part. And of course, in years past, you would see Kyle Busch brush out the media and just give, short answers before walking away in frustration. But he gave a very polite interview post-race. And I just think that there is that hunger in him to get back to victory lane. And also post-race, he went over and he shook Christopher Bell's hand. And one thing I want to point out, in the 2 of the last 3 events prior to yesterday, Bell and Kyle Busch have had their run-ins with each other through the S's and at the top of the hill in Turn 1 last year, to the point where Kyle confronted Christopher Bell post-race, and he was not very pleased with him. But yesterday he went to victory lane and shook Christopher Bell's hand as a sign of good sportsmanship. And what they did yesterday, even that slight contact through the S's on this, I think the lap before that Christopher Bell took the lead from Kyle Busch and eventually the win, it was just good, hard racing. There was no, dinking and dunking and hitting a guy so hard to dump him out of the way. It was just good racing on both their parts. And I tip my cap to Kyle Busch again for a great performance yesterday and maturity in his post-race interview. So it sucks that Kyle Busch came up short, but that win is coming. Number 3, road course aces with some top 5s. Yesterday, you saw a lot of the road course guys, the specialists that we like to see up front a lot and competing for the wins, running up there and giving it their best. And at the end of the day, some of those guys were able to finish up inside the top 5, and a few others that are really good road course aces but got behind early, made some incredible rallies. Starting off with William Byron finishing in second place. Of course, opened the season with the Daytona 500 win. Could have had a chance to win last week until the wreck on the backstretch with 2 to go with Austin Cindric. Yesterday, he almost got back-to-back wins at Circuit of the Americas, trying to run down Christopher Bell in the 20 car. Once Byron got by the 8 car, Kyle Busch, Byron kept hounding that 20 car. As a matter of fact, the way that the 8 and the 20 were running together the last few laps of the race, that allowed the 24 car, who fell a little bit behind, to catch right back up past the 8 car and try to rally and catch the 20 car and try to get by him. Byron was doing everything possible, trying to put the bumper, his front nose bumper, to the back of the back bumper of the 20 car, but he couldn't root him out of the way, and I don't think that Byron wanted to dump the 20 car out of the way and have a bad image on his racing style, and the way he would probably have, run into the back of the 20 car, maybe root him out of the way. That did not happen. Byron gave it everything he had, but unfortunately it was not meant to be. But nonetheless, a great performance. And a little roles reverse, actually. Last year, Byron won the race, and it was Christopher Bell trying to catch up and trying to pass him for the victory. This time, it was Byron chasing Bell. This time, Byron ended up getting second, but it's a great performance nonetheless. Then we go to Tyler Reddick, who started on the pole for the race, and of course, he got his first career win on a road course a couple years ago at Road America, where the Cup Series ran. And of course, he won here 2 years ago in his first win with the team in 2311 Racing. At times yesterday, it seemed like he had a really good race car, but early on the race, after a couple laps and the tires kicked in, he started to fade a little bit and wasn't really as good as his competitors in Kyle Busch and SVG. But when we got into that final stage and he got that tri position back and kept running down the leaders, he too was catching those guys at the front of the field when they were all racing, close together, not able to make a pass or anything because these guys were slipping on these old tires. They put on a show yesterday, and Reddick coming from behind made it very interesting too. If the top 2 had collided with each other, then Tyler Reddick could have pulled through and gotten the win yesterday. But he fell a little bit short. It's still a great performance by the 45 team and Tyler Reddick. And then we go to 4th place finisher Chase Elliott, who is still dubbed the Road Course King because he has the most wins out of anybody active in the Cup Series on a road course. Yesterday, his day did not get off to a good start despite a 3rd place effort at the start of the race, qualifying-wise. Going up the hill into turn number 1, coming way from behind, is the 1 car of Ross Chastain, who carries in too deep at the top of the hill in turn 1 and gets into the 9 car, sending Chase Elliott around into the pack. Thankfully, didn't suffer a lot of damage, but cost him a lot of track position. And it pretty much, at the beginning, killed his race. He had to play catch-up from there on out. He was able to stay out while some guys elected to pit. He stayed out and was able to get some stage points. But then after the stage came to a conclusion. They came to pit road. They worked on the left rear wheel because of the damage they had from that contact with the one car, and they were still having to play catch up because despite making successful repairs, they fell behind when the field was coming to green on the restart at the start of stage number 2. So from there on, he still had to play catch up. But once he finally got back in sync with everybody else, he put on some tires and was still trying to fight his way through the field. And when that last caution came out, he, along with a few others, pitted to come and get some tires because he was one of the early guys that pitted during that green flag pit stop sequence in the final stage. And that pit stop at the very end worked to his advantage because he kept passing guys left and right and got himself inside the top 10. And at the top of the hill, going down into the S's, Elliott made his way inside the top 6 by passing the one car of Ross Chastain, who he said on the radio, we're going to give him back, but if you see on social media, the one car actually slowed down and let the 9 car go by because he didn't want to face retaliation. So that was very interesting. But with all that, the 9 car was still able to pass guys and get himself inside the top 5 and pass Kyle Busch there for 4th place on the white flag lap. And a recovery to finish 4th is a great effort by the 9 car. But imagine if we maybe had 5 more laps left in this race. The way those top 3 were running, could he have chased them down? We'll never know. But regardless, a great comeback after a miserable start for the sport's most popular driver. So great run yesterday by all 3 of our road course aces, Byron, Reddick, and Elliott, showing strength and resilience in their races. Number 4, Trachouse brought speed, but didn't really get the results that they hoped for. Trachouse Racing was a team this weekend that I think we were all looking at with strong eyes to see how good all 4 of their cars would do because all 4 of them have been very successful on road course. Of course, Shane Van Gisbergen, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and making his Cup Series debut in a 4th part-time car, Connor Zilic. Well, yesterday, those Trackhouse cars definitely showed the speed, but the results were not really there for them in the end that they had hoped for. Starting off with Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, making his 2nd trip to Circuit of the Americas, had a pretty decent run last year, didn't really get the result he had hoped for. Yesterday at the beginning of the race, he seemed like he may have had the best car. When he took the lead from Tyler Reddick about 10 laps into the race, he was driving off, but hounding him from behind was that 8 car of Kyle Busch. Those 2 were pretty much stuck like glue a lot of the race yesterday, racing for the lead, racing for the most points possible for those stages. SVG definitely had a really good car, particularly on those long runs when we got heat into the tires. But on restarts, I could tell that the 88 wasn't the best when it came to fire-off speed. He would lose a couple of positions and lose some of that track time, and it would take him a while to try to get that time and those positions that he had from early in the race back. And on that final stage restart, he was not really going well, especially as I mentioned, Bell made a move to the inside, shuffled the 88 back, and from there on, it kind of pretty much took him out of the equation. Even though he was the last car to pit in that green flag pit stop sequence before the caution for the 11 and the 3 getting together, SVG could have rallied to get a top 5, but he was just too far back of the leaders at that moment. And when that caution came out, he lost a couple spots on the restart, which I have no idea how in the world that happened. But despite all that, he was able to come away with a 6th place result, his first top 10 of the season. So nothing to be too disappointed about. And don't worry, he's got plenty more opportunities to win a road course this year before we get to the regular season finale this year. Then we go to Ross Chastain, of course, the man that started the, interesting bump and runs and controversies of the race yesterday on lap 1 and turn 1 when he dove in and got into the 9 at Chase Elliott at the top of the hill. Chastain has gotten better with his aggressiveness, but yesterday was a little bit of a step backwards. Why in the world are you dive bombing that early in the race? If you hold your position, don't make a dive bomb, and you can just negotiate through turn 1 with a lot of guys behind you, in front of you, and side by side, and you still come out in the top 10 with solid track position, then you're going to be fine. I don't understand why he had to make that dive bomb move that early in the race at turn 1 and pretty much took out, the sport's most popular driver of a chance of winning the race, even though the 9 was able to rally for a top 5. I don't understand what was Chastain thinking right there. But despite that, there was speed in that Busch-like car yesterday. But then at the very end of the race, once those old tires kicked in, because he was one of the few drivers that elected to stay out while it was pitted, and of course at the top of the hill, when the 9 cars behind him, Chastain pulled over the side, said, nope, I don't want you retaliating against me. You go on ahead. Chastain, I think after that, and the tires really kicked in, he fell outside the top 10 at the end of the race, finishing in 12th. It was still a good result, but obviously the drama at the start of the race, as well as, not finishing where they probably should have been, which is inside the top 10, a little bit of a missed opportunity for him. And then we go to the other two Trackhouse cars that collided at the beginning of the final stage. Daniel Suarez was running inside the top 10 after being in the top 5, top 10 for a relatively good part of this race, showing good speed, and he's a really good road course racer, and his first win came on a road course in the Cup Series in 2022, driving for Trachouse Racing team in the 99 car. Well, yesterday, coming off into turn number 19, the car got on the curbing and sent around into the pack, generating a caution, but it got way worse there when his teammate Connor Zilic was trying to fly by on the outside. Unfortunately, Suarez was coming up the track on the outside portion of the circuit, and Zilic hit the 99 car, sending Zilic into the barrier and sending both him and Suarez out of the race. Very disappointing start to Daniel Suarez's 2025 season. Caught up in that wreck with 4 to go at Daytona in regulation earlier this year. Even though he was able to finish the race, it wasn't the result he'd hoped for. Being the defending winner of last year's Atlanta race last weekend, having the tire or getting caught turned around in the middle of the pack and collecting multiple cars in the final stage last week definitely sucked. And it sucked yesterday because he had a great car to finish inside the top 10. Unfortunately, the wreck is just a big bummer for Daniel Suarez. He's not out to a good start this year, especially when there's a lot of pressure on him to try to perform this year and still be competitive on a weekly basis. They got to get out of this little rut that they're in. And then, of course, the other receiving end of that wreck was Connor Zilic. Now, he, at the beginning of the race, was part of the collision at the beginning of the top of the hill in turn 1 on lap 1, where he was trying to pass on the outside of all those guys, avoiding the 9 car sitting at the top of the hill, spun around. Zilic made contact with the 11 of Denny Hamlin, and that cut the right front tire of the 87 car, and Zilic fell way behind and had to come down pit road and make a pit stop. But once he put on those fresh tires, lap time-wise, he was the fastest cat on that circuit. And when he finally got caught back up with the leaders after the stage ended, he legitimately was passing guys at will. That 87 car was so strong. This young man has been a very, very good road course racer since he joined the NASCAR scene last year. Of course, winning the pole for that truck race for Spire Motorsports, winning his first Xfinity Series start at Watkins Glen last year, a road course. And yesterday, the progress he made to challenge himself back up into the front of the field at the top 10, I felt like that the top 10 or maybe a top 5, and who knows, maybe the win was still in his cards. But unfortunately, he got caught up in that wreck there with the 99 car, just nowhere to go, and clipped him and sent him right into the barrier, pretty much ending this young man's promising Cup Series debut. But he showed a lot of maturity in his interview, said, I had a lot of fun out there regardless. It sucks, but I'm proud of the effort that my guys gave me. A really good race car, great pit stops, and he said he learned a lot driving a different body style car. This is the first time he's ever driven this next-gen car. Of course, he is a regular in the Xfinity Series. He won the race on Saturday, did a really good job despite a few run-ins with some of his competitors, including his teammate Carson Quapfel. But that Zilic kid, you're going to hear that name for a long, long time. And it would not surprise me if we maybe see him in the Cup Series in the coming years. Maybe next year. But we'll wait and see how the rest of the season plays out. But that young man, Zilic, he is going to be something in this sport, folks. So a really good speed-wise day yesterday for Trachouse Racing, but they all didn't get the results that they were hoping for. And number 5, new configuration, really good racing. Yesterday, we not only returned to Circuit of the Americas, but we were debuting a brand new configuration to the racing circuit. Of course, if you've watched the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series run the circuit the last couple of years, and of course, if you've watched Formula One, you know that they go up through the S's and then up a hill, downwards, and then you make a sharp turn up into a long back straightaway. Well, this year, NASCAR said, we want to make the racing more competitive for the fans and for the drivers, so we're going to take out that backstretch section, and we're going to implement a tight corner entry and tight corner exit in the circuit, turn 6A and 6B, to improve some passes at a technical standpoint, as well as seeing how the tires would fare off with these guys racing side by side. And I must say, NASCAR, job well done. That new configuration that we ran at yesterday on Circuit of the Americas made for some great racing and amazing passes in those sections. Into 6A, out of 6B. We saw a lot of guys running there side by side. We saw, of course, a couple of spins and contact, but not a lot of big wrecks that generated cautions, and that shows the respect and the competitiveness that the drivers had with each other yesterday. And the racing in general yesterday was so good. It might be the best racing we've seen at Circuit of the Americas with the Cup Series since we debuted here in 2021. Of course, the first race with the next-gen car at this circuit was very entertaining. Of course, the finish, the last couple of years have been kind of, 2023, all those wrecks at the very end, not a good look. Last year, long green flag runs, no stage breaks. I mean, it just was average at most part. But yesterday's race, that was amazing. And of course, the battle for the win at the end with all four of those guys, you could throw a blanket over them with how tightly packed they were, slipping and sliding around on that track on worn out tires. It was awesome. I really, really enjoyed that race. And I hope that Circuit of the Americas does not leave NASCAR, because watching that race yesterday and with that configuration and the soft tire that we brought this weekend, which I think definitely made for some good action on the track, especially with strategy for guys willing to come in and pit early before the end of the stage versus guys willing to stay out and get some of those stage points. And of course, the different strategies between guys pitting early versus pitting late in the final stage when the win was on the line, it definitely made it very entertaining. And I couldn't be more proud of the show that these drivers put on yesterday. And I tip my cap to NASCAR for this configuration change and the tire that they brought. It was the best COTA race for the NASCAR Cup Series that I've seen. So, job well done, everybody. That was awesome. And hopefully, this is the beginning of some much more competitive road course racing at all the road courses that we go to on the schedule this year. Now, we're off to our first short track of the season. After 3 weeks of wild card races, 2 drafting tracks, and a road course, we're off to Phoenix Raceway in the desert for our first short track race of the year, where we're also going to be debuting an option tire. And I think NASCAR and the teams will be planning this and using this as a kind of a test session to see what kind of tire that we want to bring to Phoenix in November when the championship is at stake for the Cup Series. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, and we're going to find out which teams have what. The first 3 weeks, as I mentioned, wildcard tracks, I don't think we've seen some of the teams show what they really have at a lot of the venues that we'll be running at for the majority of this year. The short tracks, the 1.5 miles and 2 miles, we don't know which team has what yet. I think we're going to have a lot of questions answered next week about who has it and who's got a lot of work to do to try to get their teams better. And hopefully at Phoenix in the fall when the championship is on the line. So we're going to see what happens next week. I'm really excited to see how it goes with this option tire and to see who is going to be on their A game next weekend. So who can come out on top? Will it be the man who won last year's race and championship in Joey Logano? Or will it be Christopher Bell, who won this race in the spring last year? We're going to find out. It's going to be a very interesting race. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Christopher Bell and the 20 team on an impressive win at COTA. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!